Every time you get what you want, your mind quietly invents something new to chase, a new dream, a new craving, a new reason to run, and you call that living. But it's not life you're living, it's desire, and desire never ends. The moment you taste satisfaction, it begins to fade. The happiness you waited for dissolves like smoke, and suddenly you're hungry again. This is what Arthur Schopenhauer called the tragedy of existence. We are not driven by reason or logic or goodness, but by an endless blind force inside us, a force he called the will. The will doesn't care if you're happy. It only cares that you keep wanting, keep moving, keep suffering. And the cruel truth is, you can't stop it, because the will doesn't belong to you. You belong to it. We believe we're chasing goals, but in reality, it's the will that's dragging us forward, through pleasure, pain, failure, and success. Every desire feels like freedom, but it's actually a leash. You think you chose your dreams, but your dreams chose you. The will uses them to keep you alive, not awakened, not fulfilled, just alive enough to keep wanting. That's the first prison Schopenhauer saw, the prison of desire, an invisible cycle where suffering becomes the engine of life. You want something, you suffer until you get it, and then it dies in your hands. The joy fades, and the silence after it feels unbearable. So your mind invents another desire, something new to fill the gap. You call it ambition, you call it progress. But it's just the same hunger wearing a different mask. Schopenhauer wrote, "Every satisfaction, or what is commonly called happiness, is only a deliverance from a pain." In other words, happiness doesn't exist on its own. It's just the temporary pause between two forms of suffering. Think about the last time you wanted something desperately. A person, a job, a goal. You believed that once you got it, you'd finally feel whole. And for a moment, you did. Then your mind whispered, "What's next?" That whisper never stops. It's the sound of the will, reminding you that nothing will ever be enough, because desire doesn't lead to peace. Desire is the war. Most people spend their entire lives chasing the idea of happiness, but what they're really chasing is relief. Relief from the tension of wanting. And when that tension disappears, even for a second, it feels like joy. But it's only an illusion, a flicker before the next storm. That's why the happiest moments in life always feel fragile, because deep down, you know they'll end. Schopenhauer said that life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. Pain, when you're chasing what you don't have. Boredom, when you finally get it. You're either suffering from lack or suffering from having too much. Either way, the will keeps winning. And yet the world tells you to keep wanting. It calls it ambition, growth, motivation, but it's really just another way of keeping the will alive. You are not free, you are fueled. The more you want, the more the will feeds. And the more it feeds, the emptier you become. So how do you escape? Schopenhauer's answer wasn't optimism. It was awakening. You can't escape the will by feeding it, only by starving it. The more you chase pleasure, the tighter the cage becomes. But when you stop chasing, the bars begin to disappear. Peace isn't found in what you add to your life. It's found in what you let go of. To desire nothing, he wrote, is to be free of pain. That's not nihilism. It's clarity. The less you want, the less power the world has over you. And that's the closest thing to freedom we'll ever know. But Schopenhauer didn't leave us in despair. He believed there were moments, small, rare moments, when the will goes silent, in art, in compassion, in stillness. When you create or observe beauty, your desires pause. The hunger stops for just a moment and you simply see. That's what art is, a temporary escape from the madness of wanting. Compassion works the same way. When you feel real empathy for someone else's suffering, your own will weakens. You stop living only for yourself. The will loses its grip. And in stillness, in silence, in solitude, you begin to see the truth that the will hides, that you were never in control. Modern life, though, has turned the will into a god. It sells it through screens, through status, through self-help slogans. It tells you that wanting more is progress, that satisfaction is failure, that enough is never enough, You're not being controlled by chains. You're being controlled by your own hunger. The system doesn't need to imprison you. It only needs to keep you unsatisfied. Every ad, every post, every influencer is a priest of the will, preaching salvation through desire. But the gospel of more only leads to emptiness. The more you have, the less you feel. The more you chase, the less you see. You call it success, but it's really exhaustion. There's a reason burnout feels spiritual, because it is. It's the soul realizing it's been worshipping the wrong God. You were never meant to live as a consumer of moments. You were meant to live as a witness, to observe, to feel, to exist without needing everything to mean something. That's what Schopenhauer called denial of the will. Not giving up on life, but giving up on chasing life. When you stop chasing, you begin to notice things you were too busy to see. The taste of food, the silence after rain, the stillness between your breaths. You start to see that peace was never missing. You were. The moment you stop demanding that life satisfies you, life finally becomes satisfying. Because the problem was never the world, it was the wanting. And if you listen closely, you'll realize that the will, that hunger, has one fatal weakness: awareness. When you become aware of it, when you see the pattern, the illusion starts to break. It doesn't disappear immediately, but you stop being its slave. You start seeing desire for what it is: a shadow, a whisper, a habit of the mind pretending to be purpose. And then, for the first time, you feel a kind of peace that doesn't depend on anything. A silence that doesn't need to be filled. That's not happiness. It's freedom. Schopenhauer knew that suffering could never be erased, but he also knew it could be transformed. When you stop running from pain, you begin to understand it. Pain becomes a teacher, a mirror, a reminder that you're still alive, but no longer enslaved. The death of desire isn't the end of emotion. It's the end of delusion. It's the moment you realize that wanting less doesn't mean losing. It means returning. Returning to yourself, to stillness, to peace. Most people will keep chasing until their last breath. They'll run after meaning, after money, after love, never realizing they were chasing their own shadow. But a few, a rare few, will stop. They'll see that every next thing was just another name for suffering, and they'll finally rest, not because they gave up, but because they woke up. The world will call it apathy, but it's not, it's clarity. You're not rejecting life, you're rejecting illusion. You're not refusing to play the game. You're simply refusing to pretend it means anything. That's the freedom Schopenhauer spoke of, a freedom that begins not with getting what you want, but with no longer needing to want at all. You can't kill desire entirely. You're human. The will lives through you. But you can stop letting it own you. You can see it, understand it, and smile at it when it whispers, "There's something missing." And you can answer, "No, there isn't." The death of desire is not the death of life. It's the rebirth of awareness. It's the moment you stop being a servant of the will and become a witness of existence. It's not the end of passion. It's the beginning of peace. The moment you stop needing the world to give you meaning, the world finally starts to make sense. The less you want, the freer you become. The less you depend on others to make you whole, the less they can break you. Maybe the goal was never to have everything. Maybe it was to want nothing. And in that nothingness, discover everything. Because the death of desire isn't a tragedy, it's liberation, and only when desire dies can you finally begin to live. If this made you think, or made you feel something you can't explain, leave a like and subscribe for more. This is Vox Says, where darkness becomes understanding.